It's Talking Stations, Thursday, September 19th, today in EVE Online. Probably the biggest news that you have heard of is a note that came out yesterday from the leader of Legacy Coalition, Vily. He's a lead FC and basically the military leader, but also the figurehead at the moment. Maybe not technical leader, but for all intents and purposes. And he wrote to his opponent in an open letter. So with me today is Artimus. He's going to tell us what was in that. How's it going, Artimus?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for asking. So it's interesting the way this letter is worded. People may, if you sort of skim through it, get confused. So I want to clear one thing up. This is not Vily reaching out to members of Winterco and saying, "Hey, surrender to us." That's not what this is. In fact, he specifically states like, "You can continue to fight against us. It's just this is us making arrangements for after the fight is over." And specifically, what Vili mentions here is that any groups who are not fraternity, or they mentioned one other group, let me find it.
Cure, wasn't it?
Yeah, fraternity or cure. So anybody who in Winterco who is not fraternity or cure can send an Eve mail to Vili. And if they do that now, then in Vili's own words, when Legacy wins, Legacy will allow them to stay in their space, give or take, and treat them like any other neutral entity. The example given in the letter is Providence. So, pretty much, I think a safe interpretation of that is they'll have a non invasion pact with Legacy Co. And so, this is like Vili saying, hey, Legacy's going to win this. You guys are losing. We're not asking you to surrender to us. We're just saying, when we win, if you want to keep your space, email me now so that we can have a non invasion pack set up. That's the way it sounds to me. It definitely sounds like Legacy is looking to put up sort of a friendly buffer state over to that eastern side, that northeastern side of Legacy Coalition core regions, instead of having a situation sort of like what we have up north in Tribute and Vale of the Silent, where it's just sort of a wasteland. Like there are small groups doing really cool things, but that doesn't really help Legacy, so to speak. An invading force can still nestle right up next to their core regions and be a threat. And so I think Legacy wants to install some friendly entities there, have a non invasion pact with them. And this letter is basically them trying to source those friendly entities from right within Winter Coalition. So it's a freaking bold move. We'll see how it works for him, Cotton.
Yeah. Well, he's made bold moves in the past. Let's look at the coalition map here. Just kind of get an idea of where we're at. Such unfortunate geography, but pay no attention. You have Winter Coalition in the gold brown area, and you have Legacy in the dark blue. In between is essentially Fire Coalition. And neutral states is really not neutral states. That is Army of Mango. I think in Mist, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's with blue. So the red, the red, white, and the blue, they all stick together here. And the opponent is the Winter Coalition right there in the brown or the gold. Well, it seems that is an interesting diplomatic move to end the war quicker because
Yeah, and
yeah.
they're not just making diplomatic moves either. Like just yesterday, talking to Ron USMC, a co-host on the midweek show, and he's
Mhm.
often on the Sunday show too. And he was saying, like, listen, we're in O3 TAC right now. O3 TAC 4MN being one of the staging systems in Detrid for Fraternity and Winterco as a whole. And they reinforce the iHub in that system, which is important because that's what allows Fraternity to anchor and utilize Sinojammers. And then they're also going around and they safe logged Titans, at least while they were in there, they safe logged Titans in system. They were going through and just reinforcing structure after structure after structure. The theory was they were going to go and reinforce the Keep Star. I haven't seen anywhere that the Keep Star is actually reinforced,
Mhm.
but definitely, like, it seems to me they sent out this letter. They saying, "Hey, Legacy's about to win," and now they're going in and they're trying to headshot Winter Coast staging and Detrid. So they are really like, we had the offensive from Legacy Coalition for a long time. Then it felt like Pandemic Horde and Pandemic Legion came down. There was a counteroffensive from Winterco, and this feels like yet another counteroffensive with the added momentum of the Army of Mangoes joining in with Legacy, joining arms, and they're pushing right back, going for the kill now, in my opinion.
Wild. Yeah, this is the one place in the map where you have seen really active fighting for a while. And um, getting messages here. That hasn't stopped through blackout, and that hasn't stopped actually since it started. I think it started in, was it around April? I'm not exactly sure when there was, but
If I remember right, it was March was the non-invasion pact ended.
okay.
So there was a non-invasion pact between Fraternity, or all of Winterco, and Legacy Coalition that was the result of the end of the quote-unquote Big War, when the Imperium went north and Legacy was fighting to protect their space down in south.
Right. So that NIP, they call it, broke down just a few days before with, it depends on who you talk to, but it looked like Legacy prematurely invaded Winter Coalition. They said they would anyway, but they went in a few days early, stating that Elo was doing some pirating attacks from their territory, therefore they had to cross the border to stop that. No, it was Skillu that was doing the pirate attacks. So that ended in the spring and has been a constant hot zone pretty much up until now, but it looks like Legacy's getting the upper hand, and that's the context that this mail from Legacy comes out saying, hey, you allies of Winter, of Fraternity, you other parts of Winter Coalition that we have no beef with, tell me now if you want to stay in your space. Otherwise, we'll consider you an opponent and kick you out of your space. And I think it would bring an end to the war quicker if people are ready to. I mean, if I was a leader of one of those groups, I would say, well, I'll cover my bets. I'll still fight for Fraternity and try to win this war, but I'll send an email to Vily saying, hey, don't kick us out if we lose the war. And that would be, I guess, a prudent move. But what you would also do inadvertently is open up diplomatic channels to the conquering power before the war is over.
I would. I wouldn't do that, at least outright. I'd go to the leadership of Winterco and say, "Hey, I'm gonna poke Legacy. I'd let Winterco know, let Fraternity know that you're gonna reach out to Vily and come up with some excuse as to why you should do that. Because any alliance that goes and Eve mails Vily, there is the chance that Vily turns around and releases that information, if not to the public, to Fraternity and Winterco leadership. And so suddenly you have infighting of all the groups who didn't reach out to Vily and all the groups who did reach out to Vily, and accusations of split loyalties, so to speak. So I would, if you're a group in Winterco, I would be very careful in how you respond to this. And definitely, if you're going to respond to Vily, my recommendation is my own personal opinion, not affiliated with TIS, is to talk to Winterco leadership first.
You want to do things out in the open, otherwise you'll be suspect. It could also be a move to destabilize their opponent, right? Like, hey, your morale should be low because you're losing. We're going to win this war. You can see we're taking. We planted a. They attacked the iHub in the staging system for Fraternity. I don't know if they've actually destroyed it yet. I don't think so. But they've been fighting even today, as early as a few hours ago. They took 4 iHubs, and it was in a 4-hour fight. So yeah, and that was about within the last 8 hours. And you have that backdrop, and then you send a message basically saying, "Hey, if you're afraid that you're going to lose, show us by sending us an email that says you want to keep your space." And I think that would fracture. I think that would fracture some trust in Winter Coalition if they don't take your advice.
Regarding the iHub and Winterco staging system of O3 TAC 4MN, that comes out tomorrow in 19 hours.
Mm.
It comes out at roughly 10:30 Eve time on September 20th. So it's within like core Winter Coalition Fraternity time zone. So that's good for them. They've typically had the best odds at winning pitched battles, Super Cap v Super Cap, in that time zone. That's their best chance. So we'll see what happens. That's when this occurs. But again, this is a solve battle. So you've got nodes spawning throughout the entire constellation. So the efficacy of Super Cat v Super Cap is up for debate.
Okay. So Artemis's voice is louder than me. It's because he's a lot more masculine. So I'll have to turn myself up to compensate. There.
I'm actually going to dip out and finish editing last night's episode. So
Awesome.
enjoy the rest of the stream, everybody.
Thanks, Artemis. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. So that's the update on the Winter Legacy War that's been going on. And it's kind of interesting to me that the involvement of the other powers like the Imperium has been sparse. And sometimes it's been against Legacy because they were kind of using them as a hunting grounds, at least during the blackout. But that is all turned towards Winter Coalition, it looks like now, with attacks coming out of the white area that you see here at the bottom called neutral states. That's actually those are allies to Legacy. And essentially always have been, but they haven't been given a coalition name. They are Army of Mango. That's the main alliance there. And I think it's just them. So at this point, you might as well color that blue. Also, Fire Coalition in the red there is actually former XIX or Legion of Death or XIX Death. They're those X's, my God. X's and dots in Eve are just killers. Like, why? I think it's all like recursive Unix inside joke kind of stuff. But basically, you have Fire Coalition, which are Russians. And you have Army of Mango that are Chinese. And then you have Legacy that are US and EU, mostly US, I think. And those groups are fighting essentially Winter Coalition, which is fronted by Fraternity, which is a Chinese alliance, but they have either hired or recruited a legendary fleet commander, Elo Knight, from Black Legion fame, and he's actually their military director now, and he's used Munins really effectively, and Winter in general has used the Sino Jammers really effectively up until now. I think what really hurt Winter Coalition, it appeared, was the blackout, because without the ability to go out into mine and occupy your space, they were not able to keep their ADMs up, and that makes them more vulnerable. So blackout did play a role in the tide turning, it looks like here. But to my point that I was making earlier, it doesn't look like the Imperium has really jumped into this war, and neither has Northern Coalition in a big way. Northern Coalition is actually up north pummeling Deadco. Let's go up to that part of the map. There's in the purple at the top there, you have Dead Coalition. And here you also have a white area below in Tribute and Veil. Those areas, right in the middle of this screen here, those areas, Tribute, Veil, maybe extends all the way over to Fade and Pureblind. Those are neutral states that I'm aware of. They are not aligned. Those are a lot of little alliances, and you can tell by the borders. So that's an exciting place to look at, because you're seeing a lot of activity with a lot of groups that are smaller and not necessarily part of a coalition. So that's funny. They've retitled Northern Pandemic. I guess that's Northern Coalition and Pandemic Legion. And they are actually in Tenal, which is up north, like almost at the very top, and Venal. Venal and Tenal are right next to each other, and those areas are being ravaged right now by Northern Coalition. Okay, so that's the map this morning. There's a lot of wars going on, besides the small skirmishes that happen here and there. And remember, blackout is now lifted, so you're having a whole different environment than you've had in the last 3 months. In the last 3 months, there was a lot of, I don't know what you would call it, but there was a lot of confusion on how to proceed. And I think one of the main things that was happening was bombers were using wormholes to travel all over the map to find people to destroy. And a lot of those bombers ended up in probably Catch and Impasse, which is in the south. That's legacy space where Brave lives. They live in Catch. And I think those guys were targets for a lot of bombing, and so was Test for a while. So that was the fun zone for a while with a lot of these bombers coming around. But it may not be over, but they certainly don't have the blackout cover anymore. Okay, that's it for military news. Let's see what else we got. How are you guys doing, Caleb, Lux?
What? Is this my cue to fight you?
Yeah. Put them up. Put them up. No.
What are we gonna fight over?
No fighting, more hugging.
You were doing man hugs with rubbing yesterday, so no. Fighting for today, please.
All right, fighting's fine.
Okay, what's happening?
Fighting's just another form of hugging, right?
Hugging's just a means of communication.
Yeah, totally. Ooh, let's see. Is that Malaya? That's the system Malaya. There's a cemetery there. Is that Malaya site up yet?
Right.
No, it's MOL. Not Mela. Mela is in a different part of the world. This is where the cemetery is. Yeah. Malaya is, I think it's in Genesis. I'm not sure, but we can check it right now. And that is where the cemetery is going up. I don't know if it's up, and that was my question, if that is up already. And I don't expect.
I thought that was a tooth, to be actually honest.
Oh, probably not what they were hoping for. Oh, I'm totally wrong. It's in Kanid, and that is in Amarian space near Corazor border. That's funny. I always thought there's the obelisk in Genesis. There's other landmarks in Genesis. Genesis being the origin region of New Eden. That's basically where we all came from, right? That's why it's called Genesis. And real quick, if we go to Genesis, that's not the way to get there. We'll go over here. You can see Genesis is kind of in the middle-ish of the map, and it doesn't seem to have a sovereignty, but it's definitely an Amarian space, favored-wise. But if you look down at Genesis, you'll start to see, as you get closer and closer to the original system of EVE Online, it's called New Eden, that the names get really funny. Like you have New Eden, and connected to that you have Promised Land, and connected to that you have Central Point, and another system called Dead End that goes nowhere, and another system called Canard. But then if you keep going through what we call the pipe, which is which just means you don't have a choice. You have to go from one system to the next system to the next system to the next system. That creates no alternatives. You have to go through that path. They call that a pipe in EVE Online. And if you keep going through that pipe, like water going through a pipe, you get to Getaway, and then you get to Exit. These are system names. And then you get to Access. And so you can see that in an interesting way, you start out in one system called New Eden, and then as you make your way out and away from that system, you start to see hopeful system names like Getting Away, Exit, Access, and then it starts getting into names that you won't recognize.
Is this supposed to be some sort of NPE experience?
We just want to cover all kinds of things.
You got names and match with what you're supposed to do and what the system is doing.
Oh, no, I think what they're trying to do is convey history. Like as the people landed in New Eden and started to move through systems over long periods of time, that you can see that their journey, you can see their journey through the naming of the systems. And as you get further away from the original system, where we're all essentially from, you start to see them coming out, like Exit, Getaway, Access. Now you're accessing the rest of the galaxy, the rest of the cluster. Getaway and Exit are basically means you're getting out of this constellation. So it's kind of neat. I think it kind of shows a snapshot into early settlers. That's what it does.
I kind of wanted to live in Dead End. It kind of makes sense. I want to move to Dead End. It's how I feel at the moment.
Yeah. There used to be a lot of pilgrimage to New Eden system, which has the original Eve Gate. That's the original wormhole that people came through. You know, you want to go back to like the, what would you call that? The belly button, right? That's what we call
The Umphalis.
I was about to say that.
it. Well, you want to get back to that so people pilgrimage to it. And I think CCP has made it a dangerous pathway on purpose because pirates sit on gates because, again, it's a pipe. So people have to go through a certain way. And they sit there and they gate camp it while new players who are interested in the pilgrimage get caught up and shot dead or exploded until the next clone appears. All right. That's really all I have today. And I would cut it short, unless you guys have anything else that you got to talk about.
Bookmarks look like they're supposed to be out on CC. It was just on Hobo Leagues today.
Right, those
Yeah,
bookmarks.
Overlix definitely has interesting things on it at the moment.
Oh, I know what we'll do. We'll read Eve Mail from yesterday. So we post videos as quickly as possible right after the show so that people can catch up and watch it. And then we post the podcast as quickly as possible so people can hear that day's news in the same day. And so one of the things that we get are a bunch of comments on YouTube. And so it's just reading some of these. And some of them are hate mail. Some of them are thank you mails. But the hate mail...
Read the hate mail. Read the hate mail.
The hate mails are kind of funny. I just get a kick out of those. It says, amazing how you find many more people who agree with Matterall and Hilmar and Caleb. He just wants his game, not a game for everyone. And I think that is so funny because from my perspective, it's the exact opposite. I feel like I'm trying to fight for the game for everyone instead of a small group that is called nullsec and even a smaller group called big nullsec. It's like big business, right? So I thought I was like, it's so weird. People's perspectives are so different on the same thing. So I thought it was really odd. I stand to benefit nothing by saying, hey, you can't give in to big null because it'll make the game stagnant. I don't really gain anything from talking about that. On the other hand, the people in big null, I think, gain a lot by not being oppressed, by saying the opposite of the stuff that I'm saying. They actually have a lot to gain. And I think the CSM has a lot to gain.
If people are saying that my argument is the opposite of what you and Hilmers have been saying, right? The numbers show that I would get people to actually come to the game and make CCP money, the opposite of what Hilmer just did.
Why do you worry so much about CCP having money? Like, why is that your number one concern?
He's a market guy, by the way.
That might be it. That might be it.
Is that a new meme? Market guy, by the way. I'm going to use that one, Lux. Thank you.
I hear that a lot. Like, people are concerned that CCP is not going to make any money and therefore they got to capitulate to the players' demands to make them happy, to keep them around. Like, that just is ironic because I think what drives people out of the game is when they feel like the game is controlled by a certain group that has undue influence on CCP.
I don't know. That's a bit abstract, I think.
I don't know. Let me see if I could say it another way. No,
I think people are driven out of the game when they try to play it and the game is terrible. Your problem is where people want the game to stay terrible.
Right. One man's terrible game is another man's, I figured this out, and other people haven't.
Yeah. Some people don't want the game to change, and unfortunately the game needs to change. It's really that simple.
Yeah. And if you want to hear more about this debate, we've debated it in the last 2 days. So check out those last 2 episodes. Also, remember that if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to hear it while you're commuting, this is a podcast too. Look for it by name today in EVE Online. All right. Well, unless you guys have anything else, I'm done. It's a short day today. I got to run. But we covered some military news, which we need to get back to. I'd like these shows to be a lot more about what players are up to in the game rather than what we think about development. So
It is really good when there's actual military news.
yeah. If we're talking about our perspectives on this or that, it means there's not a lot of news out there to report on, or we're not getting our hands on the details. Tomorrow we may go into just how deadly the war is up north for Dead Coalition. They're getting pummeled pretty good by Northern Coalition, and other groups are up there as well. Okay. Real quick check of the forums. Consider this the mailbag. It's people's suggestions, people selling things, selling 2 Rourke pilots sold. That's good. That's good. One sale is actually another buying opportunity, and looks like 2 Rorquals sold. Actually, 2 Rorqual pilots. So somebody's getting out of the Rorqual business and somebody's getting in. Want to sell unallocated. What? Wow, that's a lot of unallocated. No, it's not. It's actually 1.5 million unallocated SP on a Rorqual Indie pilot. So there's another person selling a Rorqual pilot. And trying to see if this is a pattern. So far, it's only been 2 that I've seen. Would not surprise me. Here's another one. Want to sell 28 million skill point Rorqual pilot. This is what? Encouraging? This is
slightly premature. I think I would use it at least for another few months before they actually start being at risk of being.
Yeah, these might have gone on sale. I think we can check the date on this one here. This one is far back. This was 8 days ago, so the blackout was still on. So these people haven't pulled their sales. But let's look at people selling characters. So we have an Exhumer pilot. That's a minor. We don't know what that is. We have 2 Rorqual pilots. Those sold. Rorquals are also minors, heavy duty minors. You have some Sino pilots being sold here. You have a Rorqual pilot with some unallocated ISK. We just talked about that one. Here you have.
Oh, and CCP fixed another ninja looting problem.
Another
We
Rorqual
heard
pilot
this very much firsthand.
Yeah, what was that? What was the problem?
Lux, were you?
Yeah, so on the Pirate Sotiyo's that can drop like a Moloch BPC, they're in Strongboxes that are quite large, and so you could ninja loot them with a DST, so like a little indie ship. And they swapped the volume on those boxes to be 400,000 cubic meters, so now you need a freighter to pick them up.
Oh.
Which is getting some interesting reactions, notably from the people that ninja loot and won't be able to ninja loot them anymore.
You're not going to ninja loot.
We had a specialist drop by and cry about it a little bit and tell us why it was a problem. None of them necessarily entirely disagreeing that ninja looting should be some sort of gameplay, but maybe not to the extent that it was.
I like Ron's reaction on Reddit, which is just laughing, basically.
Ron, he takes everything in good stride. So we're also joined today by Ashley Traynor. You might know her from her blog, which is really well put together. Ashley, how are you doing?
Thank you. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. How did your recipe go? Right, I know that you submitted to the contest.
I mean, it tasted great, but I don't know if CCP have judged them yet. In all honesty, though, I didn't actually get to eat much of it since it kind of went cold by the time I'd taken all the pictures.
So how are you doing? What's new with you?
Literally just got home. Published an article the other day, which actually got me gold on Reddit for the first time ever.
Oh, let's check that out.
Which was, it was actually a guest post.
Oh, the Dream Job article. I read that. That was good.
Yeah, it's one of my cult members, guy called Paul, Emperor Kalanved. Really good guy, and yeah, he's just talking about how a lot of what he learned through Eve really was what he used to get this IT management job. Some people on Reddit were thinking it was customer service rep, but that was just them not really.
What was the title of that one?
It's the most recent one on my blog. It should be how Eve Online landed me my dream.
Yep, I've got it in our links as well, Matt.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's on Reddit, but it's also on your blog, or it's a link to your blog?
Reddit is a link to my blog.
Someone, I think he actually linked it up just on LinkedIn.
Thanks,
Right,
we
his
got it.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That's where he blogged the
Here.
thing initially, and then
That was arranged in advance, so the initial version was a bit different, and I edited it, and it really reminded me of Crossing Zebras, but that's besides. Yeah, edited it for use on both sides.
I see. So this is the blog. It's called Ashy in Space, and you can get to it at ashy.in.space.
Yep.
And this covers, I mean, what do you talk about on your blog? And generally, do you have a certain area that you cover, or is it in general your thoughts and perceptions?
Well, it is in general my own thoughts and perceptions, but that comes with my own flavor, you could say, which is wormholes and theory crafting for them. And if any of the listeners now liked Crossing Zebras from back in the day, it's kind of a spiritual successor, but it's really just me.
I think it's kind of funny that the meta tag weighing on the sidebar is actually pretty much saying exactly what you just said.
It has nice artwork and a lot of content. Looks like you're pretty active.
I'm trying.
Sorry,
Yeah,
guys.
pictures, 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 words, words, words.
Shots fired.
But they're good words.
Yeah. Yeah, they sure are. Okay. Cool. Well, check
Ron
that
is
out.
here if you want to ask him about the Strongbox Maduro.
Strongbox. Matt, Ron, how are you doing?
Oh my god, yes.
What?
I'm doing really well. I'm doing really well. The Strongbox, of course, that made my day yesterday. I'm still celebrating.
All
You
right.
should have been in chat, Ron. You would have loved it.
Tell me what the Strongbox is, or tell the audience.
Yeah, so basically it's the best loot in the game, right? It is the, the end all be all of loot that you can get from an NPC. They're very rare. Um, only, they only come from this very specific rare random spawn of a building basically, right? And that has a very strong fleet around it, so it takes a lot of time and it's a lot of effort, and it's really powerful to be able to accomplish this. Well, the problem with it was that after you spent this time to kill this fleet and to kill this structure, it dropped, and it may or may not drop this really rare loot. And the rare loot is a blueprint for a faction titan. And these run 200 to 300 billion isk, right?
Mhm.
Well, when they first came out, they were the size of a normal blueprint, right? Which is very small and can be fit in an interceptor. So what people would do is when the loot dropped, they would zoom in with an interceptor, steal the loot, and then zoom off, right? And so what people were getting upset, right? That they go through all this time and effort, and somebody can just go steal it. So they made it bigger, right? So they made it into a strong box, and they made it bigger. So now only like a deep space transport can get it. And well, then what happens is, so there's someone or a couple of people or whatever that make this their like specialty, their life, right? Of camping this specific spawn and sitting cloaked up until someone else finishes it, and then they sneak in and they sit cloaked, and when the loot spawns, they uncloak, they grab it, and then they jump drive out, right? And then you can't catch them again.
Mhm.
So this small group of people have been able to do this for a very long time and pretty much have a monopoly on that really, really rare loot. And that's caused most of, I mean, I can't say most, I can just say that of the groups that I know, there's like a lot of us don't even run them anymore because it's very risky. Because you have to use, supers and titans and things like that, and you don't have to, but to keep the number of people involved low, you have to. And then, so we just stopped doing them, right? And
Mhm.
and it sucks because it's a really interesting and neat rare piece of loot. But if you wanted it, you had to go to these people and you had to pay the price that they wanted. So on Sissy, what they've done is they've increased the size, which is something that we've all wanted, right? Um, Either that or some other way of being able to hide it or some sort of fix. But they've increased it now to 400,000 M3s, right? And at 400,000 M3s, that's a normal freighter that's going to be able to, going to require to get it. So after you kill and after you go through this, you're going to have a normal freighter be able to take that loot, and then you can, do what you do to get it out. Now, obviously, the people who have been stealing it as their, I guess, their occupation
They're cat burglars.
are
We're somewhat
very,
displeased.
very upset. Oh, oh, this is ridiculous. Oh, so now they're talking about they're just going to kill the jump freighters, or they're just going to kill the freighters now, right? But what I like about this is it puts it all out. It has no it's transparent, right? Like I've always thought that, if we were in a fleet, like all of us here in comms are in a fleet, and we do this, and one of you guys steals it, like that's okay, right? Because that's like there's some espionage, there's some intrigue around that. Maybe you're, trying to steal from the corp or whatever. Like that is okay, but the whole sort of weird, tricky mechanics, that's not like part of the game. That's just weird and silly, and it's a waste, right? So I like this that it's going to take a freighter, so you'll, bridge in the freighter, and then maybe he'll whatever sit somewhere else, and then he can grab it and then he can bridge out. I love it. It requires a lot more setup. It requires more risk. And if the upset people want to kill the freighter, so be it. But at least it's out in the open. At least it's part of the game. At least it's somewhat normal.
Yeah.
But doesn't it show that there's a problem, right? This is iteration 2 on this solution, and it's not really necessarily a good solution. Now we've just scaled something that should be something that you can pick up fairly easily and ship out to something that you need an entire freighter to actually move. I don't necessarily think it's a nice solution. I think it just points to the problem of containers and container gameplay being very antiquated.
Well,
And CCP should consider doing a proper pass on it.
if I'm not mistaken, one of the people who abused this, if you call it abuse, because there are such things as cat burglars, was Cable from Volta, and he would sit over the Sotiyo cloaked, I think in a cloaked industrial. And so when it did get destroyed, he was in the vicinity, and I think he used some kind of a loot macro to pick up whatever dropped. And so
That's what's being claimed, right?
that's
And
what's being
we don't have
claimed.
proof.
We don't.
It was the same with the frigates, right? The same claim was being made when it was the frigates ninja looting.
Right.
It just shows that containers are dumb.
Right. So the point is they made it okay. So you can't fit it on a small ship because it's a bigger drop, but people were able to do it with a bigger ship, which is an industrial that has a large cargo bay, and that still didn't solve the problem. So finally they went to this thing called, I guess, the lockbox, which means it's so big that only a freighter can be there. Freighters cannot cloak. Therefore, you have to control the area in order to take the loot. Something they
Love it.
probably should have done a while ago, but people like the gameplay of thieves coming in and being able to grab something. So, but it led to some heartbreak because the very first Sotiyo that was destroyed had the blueprints stolen.
But it's the whole thing with vultures and corpses, right? The problem is that the loot or the elephant corpse is not granular. You can't steal some of it. It's very digital, so you don't get the benefits of, say, a valuable thing that's granular in space. You just have this either or situation. Either you can pick it up and run away with it, or you can't. That's not necessarily a good design, and that's fundamentally what the problem is, right? That the reward is one item.
Yeah, they expected. I don't know if you ever played Dungeons and Dragons, you guys, but there was the. It's funny. There was the introduction dungeon that you would go through. It was called Caves of Chaos. It's kind of funny, and I believe in that game, in that dungeon, you were fighting very low level characters, so you could, as a party, you could kind of make your way through this thing. And in that game, if you picked up gold as loot, you would get experience from that. And so everybody's, again, first or second level going through this, and they kill things in this room, and inside of a coffer is this diamond or some stone that was worth 7 million gold, which would immediately catapult any one character, whoever takes it, to a level 6 or 7. And the idea was that you were supposed to fight over that and kill each other for that one thing that only one person could get. So I thought I saw echoes of that here with an incredibly valuable loot drop that was supposed to make the people who destroyed the Sotiyo fight each other for it.
I like that though. I mean, I think that is, that's like part of the game, right? Like, so, I love that sort of temptation element to find out like who can you trust, right? Like, um, like all of us, and there's the loot, and any one of us could grab it and steal it and take off, and then we have to chase you. Like that's like a book, right? Or something like a story that we're all writing, and that's great. But I always kind of gave the thing as so imagine that we all, have spent 2 hours in this dungeon, and then right as we get to the final room and we open it up and it's this, you know, like lovely, magnificent golden sword at the very end, atop of this chalice. And then somebody just like uncloaks, steals it, and then runs out the wall. Done. Oh, okay, cool. So there we go.
Invisible third party appears in
Yeah,
game
exactly.
to run. It's like, what? What the
He
fuck
hasn't been
just happened?
involved. You don't even know who he is. Like whatever. Just up, dunk, gone. Oh, okay, cool.
Not,
So
not much.
that happened.
Not much gameplay there, right? I'm turning
Exactly.
on a
It
scope
doesn't really
video.
incentivize you to do it again, that's for sure.
We're looking at a video here that just has, and we're just looking at the pictures really. It has pictures of the Sotiyo when it was first introduced and attacked.
But you got my point, right, Ron? That it's because of the lack of granularity, right? The fact that it is
Right.
one unique item, so there is no scavenger fight over a carcass, right? So it is an either-or situation.
Well,
and since you can't effectively hold the field, or at least that currently the ninja looters have perfected the method to actually get it, there is no counterplay, and this whole just turning the knob up another level from DSTs to freighters, like, is this really good design? Shouldn't CCP maybe consider revamping the entire container design and mechanics? Because it's on everything, right? It's also the fact that I can jet can, and if someone touches my jet can, suddenly Concord appears. Like, why do they do that? That makes no sense. It's left in space.
Do you want to salvage it for picking up cargo?
No, I fundamentally would like it that if you were scooping a container, so the container size would be based on what's in it, right? And if you're scooping a small container, you can pretty much do that in, say, 30 seconds. if you're scooping a bigger container, the bigger the container gets, the longer it will take you to actually scoop it into your hold, and you should then be able to open it. So you have maybe a mini game of hacking, or you have to actually bring it somewhere to open it with a key.
All right.
Stuff like that, I think, would be more interesting
let-
because CCP initially wanted something like that. That's why they put all those lock things on it. But it just doesn't have a function in space.
Let's curb the dev talk for a minute and answer a question here. It says CCP. It scrolled up on me. There it is. Why don't you just look at local to see the known small thieves that are there? And I have an answer for that, but maybe you do too, Ron. Why don't you just look at local and see if there are thieves, people not in your fleet inside the same system?
Yeah, so you do see them, and you see the known thieves, and you see others. But what happens, is that person will not be logged in until the very, very end. And because this kind of comes to the other point, right? Which is, it's a very special rat spawn that spawns around this particular structure, and the Garista diamond rat will usually kill something, and be on Z kill. So I actually talked to Squiz about this.
So there's an alert,
and
basically.
Exactly, and everyone that hunts these Sotiyos down has this on their Z kill, right, as a tracked thing or a bookmark. So they watch for this, and when they see that very special rat show up, then they know that in that constellation they are, they start heading there immediately, right? So within probably 20 minutes, they're there and they're trying to get in place and this and that, and they're just waiting for someone to run it so then they can steal it. Because remember that the loot drop isn't 100%, right? So it's still pretty rare. So they steal a lot of them. That doesn't mean they get a lot of the blueprints. So what happens is they'll go there and then they'll log out, and then they'll take some random, alpha or whatever, and just kind of cruise around or watch the adjoining systems and watch for movement into that system, and then they'll see that, and then kind of maybe go through the system or something as a neutral NPC character or whatever, and then towards the end they'll log in, and you're like, oh, here it goes, but you can't stop, right? It's a it's a process, and it takes about an hour or so, hour and a half, and then right towards the end, there they are. But it's not a super high skill either, right? To be able to pull off the wizardry.
Yeah. Yeah, and they figured
that
out
they do.
They figured it out, right? They have alts watching, they're already in position, they're pre-positioned to log in and just grab what's there. But you also have the groups that these things will spawn for, because these are Sotiyos that are in the south of the map, are basically Test and the Imperium. And those groups have a lot of players that basically, I would say they have alts from other places as well. And so I think the first one, if I'm not mistaken, it was somebody in the fleet that took it. It was just an alt of somebody who was outside of Test Alliance. So basically they have spies in the groups that can pick up the loot for them. So it's not necessarily a stranger that's taking it from you. It could be your fleet mate. But that was when it first started out. Now it looks like the fleets are more secure with people that are known and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's very tight. It's very tight. And even when you're running Sotiyo in, Test, very few people will know. It'll be a very small group.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want it to get out, and because everyone has spies everywhere, so
Yeah.
they try to kind of keep it under the wraps.
So that was that was one evolution of the meta on how to do these, was to keep the fleet smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ron, real quick, give us a up to the minute update on what's going on with Test.
Yeah, so this week has been really big. Yesterday fraternities declared war on the army of Mango. So the Mangos have been reinforcing and actually going into offensive operations with us. Been really great. We anchored a Fortizar in O3 Tech 4, which is the enemy staging. Yesterday, we CTA'd, they CTA'd, and we were there to watch the anchoring. So we gated in supers and titans and whatnot, and we were, ready to go full bore. But then it was uncontested. So with all of the supers and titans around and them not contesting it, we, took that upon ourselves as free reign in the system. So we reinforced every structure, including the Keep Star in O3 Tech 4, and reinforced the iHub. And the iHub comes out tomorrow morning, and then the Keep Star comes out 2 hours later. So based on that kind of momentum that we got this morning, Sado pulled an all-nighter, as what you have to do in a time zone tank war, and he was going until like 8 a.m. this morning, and I took over at like 8 a.m. and this morning we took 4 iHubs, we reinforced 2 more, and when I say took 4, that means that we won the timer on 4 that we had already reinforced. So we replaced those, and now we've reinforced 2 more, and the kind of momentum continues. And then, the statement from Vily yesterday, right? The offer to the smaller groups, like,
Mhm.
hey, if you guys want to go, you can go, and we won't bother you. We don't care either way. But fraternity and those, because it all comes down to having a neighbor that tried to evict you last year, right? So it's like, kind of making them pay for, what happened last year, because that was really close. And I know that looking back, we can say, oh, this and that, but I can tell you that, 2 days before UALX, like people were moving out. Like we were pretty sure that we were going to get evicted. So now it's time, to kind of collect that debt, right?
So is there a strategic motivation to that? Like we're trying to figure out why Vily would do that and what kind of pressure that puts on fraternity, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, O3 TAC 4 in Deterred is their staging system. That's their Keep Star. They have another Keep Star one jump away, but that's their, Keep Star where all of their stuff is at, and where they're stage all of the attacks from, and that's hitting a staging Keep Star is kind of like a really really big move in a war, right? That's when you force them to defend, right? Like you have to defend. I mean, they don't necessarily have to defend the next timer, um, the armor timer, but they definitely have to defend the structure timer. So it just kind of puts the war you know to this one singular moment, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for updating us on what's going on over there. I think that's all the time we have. It's been an hour, so we want to get these down to 20 minutes, but it's hard because there's a lot of good conversations to be had. But if you want to be
20
a part
minutes
of,
is rough.
yeah, well, that's
Wow.
just the news, please. But we like to talk to each other and exchange ideas and do all kinds of introspection and also analysis on what's going on around us, what our own motivations are, and compared to everybody else, and just basically Eve anthropology. Thanks for joining us. We're going to go ahead and raid Marquis Dragon. That's who I see is on. I want to thank Ron for coming on, and Artimus earlier, and Ashy, and of course Caleb and Lux. Thanks for joining me. We will see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
See you.